You're lying in bed. It's past midnight. You have work tomorrow, and your brain will not stop. It's replaying something you said 3 years ago. It's running through 17 different versions of a conversation that hasn't happened yet. It's building entire catastrophic scenarios from a single text message you haven't received a reply to. You tell yourself to stop. You try to sleep, but the thoughts just keep coming. If this is you, you are not broken, you are not weak, and you are definitely not alone. But here's what nobody tells you. Overthinking is not a personality flaw. It's not anxiety. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a survival system, running exactly as it was designed to. And once you understand what's actually happening inside your brain when you overthink, you'll never see it the same way again. And more importantly, you'll finally know how to slow it down. Stay with me, because what I'm about to explain changed everything for a lot of people who thought they were just wired wrong. The origin: your brain was built for a different world. To understand overthinking, you have to go back, way back. For most of human history, hundreds of thousands of years, the biggest threats to survival weren't deadlines and social media notifications. They were predators, starvation, rival groups, environmental dangers. In that world, the brain that survived was not the calm brain. It was the vigilant brain, the brain that never fully relaxed, the brain that kept scanning for danger, even when things seemed fine. Because here's the brutal logic of evolution. A brain that assumes safety when danger is present gets its owner killed. But a brain that assumes danger when things are safe just gets its owner a little stressed. So evolution ruthlessly selected for the worrying brain. For the brain that keeps thinking, keeps analyzing, keeps running simulations of what could go wrong. That brain is your brain. You are not malfunctioning. You are the product of millions of years of selection pressure, favoring the most vigilant survivors. The problem is, that ancient system is now running in a modern world it was never designed for. The threats have changed. The brain has not. What's actually happening? The default mode network. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Neuroscientists discovered something surprising when they put people in brain scanners and told them to do nothing. When the brain has no task to focus on, it doesn't go quiet. It activates a specific network of brain regions called the default mode network, or DMN. And what does the default mode network do? It runs mental simulations. It replays past events. It imagines future scenarios. It processes social relationships. It thinks about what other people are thinking about you. In other words, it overthinks. The default mode network is always on in the background, and for people who describe themselves as overthinkers, brain imaging research shows their DMN is significantly more active, and crucially, they have weaker connections between the DMN and the brain regions that are supposed to regulate and quiet it. So when you say, "I can't turn my brain off," you are describing something neurologically real. Your brain's idle mode is louder than most people's, and the volume control, the prefrontal cortex, has a weaker grip on it. This is not a character flaw. It is a neurological pattern. And like any pattern, it can be understood and it can be changed. The loop. Why overthinking feeds itself. Here's the part that most people don't understand. And it's the part that keeps people stuck. Overthinking is not just a symptom, it's a cycle. And it has a very specific mechanism. It starts with a trigger, something uncertain, a relationship problem, a work situation, a decision you need to make. Your brain detects the uncertainty and activates. It starts running simulations. What if this happens? What if that happens? What should I do? What did they mean? What do they think of me? Now here's the trap. This feels like problem solving. It feels productive. Like if you just think about it long enough, you'll find the answer. But here's what research from the University of Michigan found, and this is important. Rumination does not lead to resolution. It leads to more rumination. The act of thinking about the problem actually increases your emotional response to it. The more you turn something over in your mind, the bigger and more threatening it feels, which triggers more analysis, which increases the emotional response further. It's a loop, and the loop has no natural exit because the brain keeps looking for certainty in situations that are, by their nature, uncertain. You cannot think your way out of overthinking because thinking is the mechanism of the problem. Not all overthinking is the same. Here's something that might surprise you. Overthinking is not one thing. Research identifies two distinct types, and understanding which one you do changes how you address it. Type 1. Rumination. This is past-focused, replaying events, asking why did that happen or what did I do wrong, replaying conversations, analyzing past decisions that can't be changed. Rumination is associated with depression, not because overthinkers are depressed, but because dwelling on unchangeable past events creates a feeling of helplessness that the brain interprets as defeat. Type 2. Worry. This is future-focused, running scenarios. What if this goes wrong? What if they don't like me? What if I fail? Anticipating problems before they exist. Worry is associated with anxiety. Again, not as a cause, but as a mechanism. The brain is trying to prepare for threats by generating them in advance. Most chronic overthinkers do both, ruminating about the past and worrying about the future. And notice what's missing from both. The present, right now, this moment. That's not an accident. The default mode network, your overthinking brain, is almost never active when you're fully engaged in the present moment. This is why exercise, creative work, deep conversation, and flow states quiet the noise. Not because they distract you, because they pull you out of the DMN and into the present, where your brain simply does not have the bandwidth to overthink. What chronic overthinking actually does to you? Most people know that overthinking feels bad. What most people don't know is what it quietly does to your body and mind over time. A 2013 study published in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology found that chronic rumination significantly increases the risk of depression and anxiety, even in people with no prior history of either. Why? Because constant mental simulation keeps your body in a low-grade stress state. Cortisol, the stress hormone, stays elevated. Your nervous system stays on alert. And over months and years, that takes a physical toll. Sleep quality drops. Decision-making capacity weakens because the prefrontal cortex, already overworked by constant mental activity, starts to fatigue. Making decisions feels harder. Small things feel overwhelming. And perhaps the cruelest irony of all, research shows that people who overthink actually make worse decisions than people who trust their instincts, because the analysis eventually produces so many competing scenarios that the signal gets lost in the noise. You think more to feel more in control, but the thinking itself erodes the control. What actually helps? The real science of quieting the loop. So if you can't think your way out of overthinking, what actually works? I want to be honest with you here. There's no switch you flip, but there are specific research-backed mechanisms that interrupt the default mode network, and over time, strengthen the regulatory connections that quiet it. The first, specific time-limited worry windows. Research by psychologist Thomas Borkovec found that scheduling a specific daily worry time, 20 to 30 minutes where you deliberately think through concerns, actually reduces overall rumination throughout the day. Your brain stops cycling through worries constantly Because it knows it has a designated time to process them. Outside that window, when the thoughts arise, you postpone them. I'll think about this during worry time. The key word is specific. Vague suppression doesn't work. Scheduled processing does. The second, physical movement, specifically rhythmic movement. Bilateral stimulation, movement that alternates between the left and right sides of the body, like walking, running, or swimming, is now used in EMDR therapy for trauma processing. But even casually, rhythmic bilateral movement has been shown to reduce DMN activity and interrupt ruminative cycles. This is why a walk often clears your head more effectively than sitting and trying to think straight. The third, named emotions, not managed ones. Research from UCLA found that labeling what you feel, specifically naming the emotion out loud or in writing, reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection system. When you say, "I am feeling anxious about this presentation," the act of naming it shifts processing from the emotional brain to the language brain. The loop loses power not because you fixed the problem, but because you changed which part of your brain is running it. These aren't hacks. They're neurological levers pulling on the actual mechanisms that create overthinking in the first place. What your overthinking brain is actually telling you. Before we close, I want to leave you with something that I think matters more than any technique. Your overthinking brain is not your enemy. It is a system that is trying, in the only way it knows how, to keep you safe. It is deeply loyal to you. It runs simulations about the future because it does not want you to be blindsided. It replays the past because it is trying to extract lessons from it. The problem isn't the intention. The problem is the volume and the fact that this ancient system hasn't caught up to the reality that most of what we worry about never comes true. Research by Penn State University found that 91% of worry events either don't happen or are handled better than anticipated. 91%. So your brain is running emergency simulations about threats that, 9 times out of 10, don't exist. The goal isn't to silence your mind. The goal is to develop a relationship with it, to acknowledge what it's trying to do, to thank it for its vigilance, and then to gently but firmly redirect it toward what's actually in front of you. That is not easy, but it is possible. And understanding exactly what's happening, as we've done today, is always the first step. If this resonated, I want you to do one thing right now. Drop a comment below with the thought that won't leave you alone lately, not because I'll solve it, but because the act of naming it, as the research shows, already begins to reduce its power over you. And if you know someone who lies awake thinking too much, share this with them. It might be the thing that finally helps them understand why. Subscribe to MindWire. Next week, we go even deeper into the psychology of why certain people seem immune to stress. And I promise you, the answer is not what you've been told.